The humans stood near the edge of the silence after the gathering was louder than any alarm. Within minutes of the vampire sisters stepping away from Elia's, Orion's station shifted into quiet emergency mode. No sirens sounded, no lights flashed, but security fields strengthened, observation drones activated, and diplomatic channels opened at maximum priority. Every major species present sent reports to their governments. One message repeated across hundreds of networks in different forms. The vampires had claimed a human. Elias was escorted, politely but firmly, to a private diplomatic residence wing. 2 human security officers walked with him, their faces tense. They did not touch him. They did not rush him. They treated him like glass that might shatter if handled wrong. Inside, the room was simple. Soft, light, neutral temperature, human-scale furniture. Elias sat on the edge of the couch and rubbed his face with both hands. "I was joking," he muttered to himself. Outside the room, arguments had already begun. Human leadership was divided. Some were afraid, others were furious. A few, very few, were quietly curious. No one liked the idea of an ancient apex species placing any kind of claim on a human citizen. Even if the vampires insisted it was not ownership, the word itself carried weight. Across the station, other species reacted with open fear. The Dralith, a warrior species, began reinforcing their embassy shields. The Murin Collective ran simulations predicting human political elevation. The machine minds flagged a sharp rise in human strategic value. Traders whispered that human protection contracts might soon be worth more than weapons. The vampire sisters, meanwhile, waited. They had not left the station. They had taken residence in a sealed, ancient chamber reserved only for their kind. The room had not been opened in centuries. Now its systems hummed to life, recognizing blood signatures older than recorded treaties. They stood together, silent. "He is unsettled," the second sister said at last. "As expected," the first replied. "Mortals value stability. That is also a choice." The meeting was tense, filled with careful language and unspoken panic. "This situation is unprecedented," a senior diplomat said. "You must understand the risk." "That may be true," the first diplomat said carefully, "but the galaxy may not accept that choice easily." He turned, the door opened without anyone touching it. The vampire sisters entered. Human security stiffened but did not intervene. Every system knew better. The sisters moved with the same calm presence as before, but something was different. Less pressure, less dominance, more restraint. "You asked for time," the tallest sister said. "We have waited." "Thank you." "Why me?" "That is why your species is dangerous. Unchanging. That is why consent matters." "Then the galaxy will have to adapt," the third replied. Elias laughed weakly. "That seems to be a theme. You will not be changed against your will." Their plan was simple: remove the human. If Elias died, the claim would collapse. The vampires would be forced into isolation to prevent war. Humanity would retreat back into insignificance. The first shots never fired. The vampire sisters felt the threat instantly. "So soon," the second said. "They fear what they do not control," the first replied. Elias opened his eyes as the station trembled slightly. What was that? "If this is happening because of me, then hiding won't fix it." Crews were disabled without death. The conflict ended before most of the station even understood it had begun. Elias felt something shift inside him, not pride, not fear, responsibility. When the sisters returned, they looked at him differently. "You did not flee," the third said. "You did not demand protection," the second added. "You accepted consequence," the first finished. Elias looked down at the crystal again. "I still need time," he said quietly. The sisters nodded. "Take it," the first said, "but understand this." It was being watched as something becoming. The station did not return to normal after the attack. Even though no lives were lost and no official alarms were triggered, everyone felt it. The invisible line that kept humans small and quiet had cracked. Whispers followed Elias wherever he went. Some were afraid. Some were curious. A few carried respect that had never been there before. Elias noticed it first in small ways. Doors opened faster for him. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Species that once spoke over humans now listened carefully when he talked. It made his skin itch. He did not like attention. He especially did not like attention that felt sharp. Human leadership requested his presence again, this time in a larger chamber with representatives from other species observing remotely. "You are becoming a focal point," a human counselor said carefully. "I didn't choose that," Elias replied. No, the counselor agreed, but it is happening. The vampires interfered with free space, one representative said. They acted because of a personal interest. I'm just saying what happened. You handled the council well, the second sister said. I didn't plan to, Elias replied. It just came out. I don't want humans dragged into war because of me. There's something I need to know, he said. If I say no in the end, will this stop? They claimed the human was being manipulated, intentionally or not. To prevent panic and future conflict, they demanded proof of human independence. Their solution was brutal but legal under galactic custom. Elias would be placed in a controlled crisis scenario without vampire intervention. If he failed, the claim would be voided publicly. If he succeeded, humanity would gain a new status under galactic law. When Elias was told, his first reaction was disbelief. You want to throw me into danger to prove a point? He asked. Yes, the human counselor said grimly. They already believe danger defines worth. We should refuse. When Elias arrived, the place was already falling apart. The habitat spun slowly, power flickering. Air was thin but stable, species huddled in small groups, fear thick in the air. They stared when they saw Elias enter alone. A human? Someone hissed. They sent a human. Let's start with who can breathe what. At one point, a structural failure threw Elias across a chamber. Pain flared in his side. He gasped but stood back up. Why are you doing this? A frightened alien asked him. Elias answered without thinking. Because someone has to. He had no special strength, no advanced tech, no immortality, just persistence. When Elias returned to Orion Station, he collapsed into a chair, exhausted. His body ached. His hands shook. The vampire sisters arrived moments later. They did not speak at first. Then the first sister knelt. It was an ancient gesture, one that had not been used toward a mortal in recorded history. You face death for strangers, she said, without reward. The second answered simply, human. This was never about vampires claiming a human. It was about the galaxy realizing that humans did not need to be immortal to matter. They just needed to stand up. And Elias Ward had done exactly that. The galaxy did not celebrate the change. It feared it. After the rescue incident, after the public challenge was completed and broadcast across dozens of systems, reactions split sharply. Some species praised human adaptability. Others quietly upgraded their defense systems. A few began planning for a future where humans were no longer background noise but active players. Elias felt the weight of it everywhere. When he walked through Orion Station now, conversations did not just stop. They shifted. Words were chosen more carefully. Some beings bowed their heads slightly. Others watched him with open calculation, as if trying to measure something invisible. He hated it. He was sitting alone in a small observation room when the human ambassador found him. You've become a problem, she said, not unkindly. Elias smiled tiredly. I was hoping for asset. I never wanted power. Everyone understood what a council appearance meant, judgment. The vampire sisters arrived to escort Elias personally. Their expressions were calm, but Elias sensed tension beneath it. This is about me, isn't it? He asked as they walked. Yes, the first sister replied. And humans? Elias asked. Also yes, the second said. The council chamber was vast and dark, carved from material no one else knew how to shape. Massive figures sat in elevated positions, their forms barely visible, their presence heavy. These were vampires who had seen empires rise and fall like waves. Elias felt small, but he stood straight. You bring a mortal into this chamber, one voice echoed. Why? His voice echoed more than he expected. So does everything that matters. I didn't ask to represent my species. I joked about being alone, and suddenly the galaxy decided that meant something. I believe it gives us responsibility. I will not be used to threaten others. If that's what this is about, end it now. If he walks away, we accept it. Elias felt his knees weaken slightly when the tension eased. He let out a breath he did not realize he was holding. You didn't have to do that, he said softly to the sisters. We did, the third replied, for the truth to mean anything. If the bond succeeded, humans would rise. If it failed publicly, humanity would fracture under internal fear. They chose force. A fleet assembled quietly near a civilian trade corridor, one heavily populated by human vessels. The message was clear: pressure. When the alert reached Orion Station, panic followed. Human command scrambled. Diplomatic channels flooded. Elias received the message last. "They're threatening civilians," he said quietly. "Yes," the ambassador replied. "They want leverage." "That's what we do." "Step aside." Civilian craft forming protective formations. Humans placed themselves in harm's way without weapons, without shields strong enough to survive. They did not attack. They blocked. Across the galaxy, humans watched and followed, freight captains, medical crews, explorers, ordinary people choosing to stand together. The coalition hesitated. Firing would mean slaughter, not victory. The coalition fleet withdrew. When the council reconvened, the decision was unanimous. The bond would stand on equal terms. Elias was informed last. He sat alone with the binding crystal in front of him. His hand hovered over it. The sisters waited, not speaking. "I'm scared," Elias admitted. "So were we," the first said. "The first time we chose change." It did not burn, it did not cut. It warmed. The bond did not tighten. It opened. Across the galaxy, something shifted, not dominance, understanding. And for the first time in a very long time, ancient immortals and fragile mortals stood on the same ground, uncertain, equal, and facing the future together. The galaxy did not end. That was the first surprise. After the bond was confirmed and broadcast, after ancient law bent without breaking, many had expected chaos. Wars, collapsing treaties, power struggles that would tear systems apart. Instead, the galaxy paused as if holding its breath. Then it adjusted. On Orion Station, life slowly resumed. Ships came and went. Markets reopened. Delegates returned to long tables and careful words. But nothing was truly the same. Elias felt at the moment he stepped into a public corridor again. People no longer looked at him like a curiosity or a threat. They looked at him like a reference point. Some nodded in respect. Some avoided eye contact. A few smiled, uncertain but hopeful. He did not glow. He did not feel stronger. He still woke up tired, still felt fear, still wondered if he had done the right thing. The vampire sisters stayed close but never crowding him. That was part of the new bond. No dominance, no command, choice every day. "The council has released a formal statement," the human ambassador told him during a quiet meeting. Humans are now classified as an adaptive cornerstone species. Some species opened negotiations with humans for the first time without condescension. Others requested human mediators for conflicts that had lasted generations. A few attempted to isolate themselves, afraid of what humans might become. The vampire species itself began to change. Young vampires questioned old customs. Elders debated flexibility. The sisters were no longer seen as reckless outliers, but as the first to adapt. That did not please everyone. One ancient vampire confronted them privately. "You bind yourselves to a mortal," the elder said. "You weaken us." The third sister replied, "Then we will remember why his life mattered." "You made it easy," one pilot told him. "You stood first." "Why do you not take advantage?" a foreign diplomat finally asked Elias during a formal dinner. Elias thought about it. "Because advantage fades," he said. "Trust lasts longer." They failed not because of vampire intervention, but because humans noticed patterns, shared information, and quietly removed the threat before it reached him. Elias found out afterward. "That's new," he said. The second sister smiled. "Your people are learning their weight." "Fear requires ignorance." "Because if I walked away, someone else would have had to stand there later, and they might have been alone." Children had reenacted the civilian blockade in school simulations, not as a battle but as a lesson in cooperation. The story was already changing. He forwarded the message to the sisters. "This," the second said softly, "is legacy." Which is why it matters now. On the anniversary of the bond, a gathering was held, not a celebration of power but of connection. Species that had once refused to sit near humans now shared tables with them. Stories were exchanged. Music adapted and blended. Elias stood, glass in hand, and felt deeply out of place. The first sister noticed. "You are uncomfortable," she said. Elias smiled. "Big events do that to me." It changed because they were visible, mortal, short-lived, stubborn, and unwilling to disappear quietly. As the night ended and the stars kept burning, Elias stood between ancient immortals and countless fragile lives, not as a ruler, not as a weapon, but as proof. Humanity did not need immortality to shape history. It only needed the courage to stand, to choose, and to keep going. Even when alone, especially then, Grand Observation Hall of Orion Station, looking out at the slow curve of stars beyond the transparent alloy glass. Ships from dozens of worlds drifted past like silent thoughts. Some were sharp and metallic, others smooth and organic. To most species here, the station was neutral ground. To humans, it was a reminder that they were still new, still watched, and still underestimated. His name was Elias Ward. He was not a soldier, not a hero, and not important by galactic standards. He worked as a junior cultural liaison, a job given to humans because it was considered harmless. Talk, listen, smile, and try not to offend ancient species that could end humanity with a vote or a thought. Elias was good at it because he listened more than he spoke. Tonight, the hall was full. This gathering was meant to celebrate another cycle of peace between species. Music played in soft waves, adjusted every few seconds to suit different senses. Lights shifted colors that humans could barely see but still felt somehow calming. Elias held a simple glass of synth drink, human-safe, and stayed close to a group of traders from a reptilian world. He smiled when spoken to and nodded when he did not understand. Eventually, someone asked him a personal question. It was a small, floating being with too many eyes and a voice that sounded like wind through glass. It had been observing him for some time. "You are alone," the being said. "No bond markers, no companion pheromones. Is this normal for your kind?" "I guess you could say I'm single." Several species instinctively moved back, creating space without knowing why. 3 figures had entered. They did not arrive loudly. There was no announcement, no flare of light, no dramatic entrance, yet every instinct in the room reacted to them. Predators stiffened. Warriors reached for weapons they were not allowed to carry. Even machines adjusted their threat calculations. The 3 vampire sisters moved together like a single thought split into 3 forms. They were tall, pale, and elegant in a way that felt dangerous rather than beautiful. Their eyes glowed faintly, not with light but with attention. Ancient attention. Their presence bent the mood of the room, pulling fear and fascination into the same tight space. The vampire species was old. Older than most stars humans had names for. They were not undead monsters like human fiction once imagined. They were an evolved apex species that fed on bioenergy, emotions, and controlled genetic extraction. They were immortal unless killed, and very few had ever managed that. They almost never attended public gatherings. Elias felt the change before he saw them. The hairs on his arms rose. A quiet pressure settled behind his eyes like being watched by a storm. He turned. The 3 sisters were looking directly at him, not past him, not around him, at him. Elias froze, every lesson from human diplomatic training screaming in his mind. Do not stare, do not challenge, do not show fear, do not show interest. Unfortunately, his human brain chose honesty instead. He swallowed. The sisters approached. With each step, the space around them cleared further. No one wanted to be close. No one wanted to be noticed. Elias suddenly found himself standing alone in a wide, empty circle, feeling like the smallest thing in the room. The tallest sister spoke first. Her voice was smooth, calm, and terrifyingly gentle. "You said you are alone," she said. Elias nodded slowly. "Yes. Just making conversation." By every survival instinct, he should have backed away. Instead, something strange happened. He felt calm, not safe, but steady. "You face us without submission signals," the sister said. "Without challenge displays, you do not beg." "Interesting." Human security froze, knowing they could do nothing against 3 vampires without starting a massacre. Elias stared. "I'm sorry," he said carefully. "You what?" "You stand mortal among immortals and still speak lightly. That is rare." "We claim bonds. Consent is why we speak now," the tallest sister said calmly. She looked back at Elias. "Human," she said. "You joked about standing alone. We offer you not ownership, not control, but recognition. Walk with us, and no power in this galaxy will see you as prey again." Human panic, galactic outrage, and beneath it all something quieter, choice. He took a breath. "I didn't mean to start anything," he said. "I'm just a normal person." He saw species who had never cared about humans suddenly realizing something had shifted. "I need time," he said. The sisters nodded together. "Time is one thing we have," the 3rd sister said. They stepped back, but the claim lingered in the air like a mark no one could see but everyone felt. The music slowly returned. Conversations resumed in whispers. Messages flew across networks faster than light. Elias stood alone again, staring at the stars, knowing one simple joke had just changed the direction of his life, and maybe the galaxy. And somewhere deep in ancient blood and immortal memory, 3 vampire sisters smiled because they had found something rare. A human who stood alone and laughed anyway.